Hello and welcome to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Rachael is a speaker, inspirational author, and an overcomer. As Rachael is walking through her own journey of grief, she's challenging others to persevere and overcome their own circumstances. Find out more at rachaelflick.com. Here now is your host, Rachael Flick.
Hi friend, thank you so much for joining me this week on the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. I have a really powerful story to share with you today, and I am encouraging you to make some space for this one. I think it's going to be really impactful, and it's going to touch some lives that really need to hear this story about my guest and the loss of her daughter. If this story impacts you, if it inspires you, will you share it with a friend to continue to push forward the message of hope with others so that they can join you and me on this healing journey together? Michelle Hord is a creative storyteller and media executive. As the president of Hope Warrior Inc. and former vice president of creative content and talent management at NBC Universal, Michelle has produced content for television shows, developed strategic solutions for business and talent management needs, and spent more than 2 decades on a quest to inspire creativity in all of its various forms. In 2018, she founded Gabrielle's Wings, a nonprofit organization dedicated to giving children of color in vulnerable communities the kind of experiences, access, programs, and exposure that Gabrielle had during her short life after the tragic loss of her daughter. Michelle graduated from Howard University. Welcome, Michelle. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Rachael.
I'm really honored to get to hold space for your story. Just reading about it in your bio, my heart is tender immediately, and I can empathize with the trauma of murder and what that does in your life. And so I want to say thank you and come with gentle spirit and open hands to hear your story. And there's a lot here, so I'm going to let you jump in and tell us.
Sure. So thanks again for having me. And I named my company Hope Warrior for a reason. And so I'm excited about the work you're doing, and congratulations, and keep being courageous and standing up for hope every day for sure.
I love bringing that word forward. Yeah.
Yes. I, like a lot of people, finished school, started on a career, was ambitious, thought I knew what I wanted my life to look like. My first job out of school was at America's Most Wanted, which at the time, I know there have been other iterations, but was started by a man named John Walsh after his own son, Adam, had been kidnapped and murdered. And so one of my first big jobs there was handling all of the missing children cases. And, this will date me somewhat, but, think back to a land far away before social media, before the internet. And I had a pager. And when
my kids asked me what that was the other day on a show, they referenced it. They're like, you did what?
And, here's the next one. Then I would find a payphone, and I would get paged when there was a missing child case, a stranger abduction, and would have to immediately go into work and put together a public service announcement that would go out across all of the affiliates with a 1-800 number. And we knew that the first 48 hours were the most crucial in stranger abduction cases. So that's how I began my career. As you've mentioned, have worked at a lot of different places, but was always really captured by stories of hope, and especially by the ordinary person that was beset with just extraordinary circumstances that a lot of times happened around tragedy, right? Around a tornado, around a shooting, around, an abduction, just things that as we watch television every day, we say, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. Those were the stories that I told. And what I always took away was the fact that we have so much in us that we don't realize until we need it. And that these moms who had a baby who, his face was plastered on magazines and television and had been kidnapped, may also be taking care of other kids at the same time, and was somehow talking to me, and was somehow navigating other media outlets, and, maybe trying to figure out how to pay the rent, right? Like, just how amazing it was that people are able to continue to go on in the face of unimaginable tragedy.
It is, because it seems like life should stop.
It does. It does. It seems like people deserve for life to stop, but it doesn't. It doesn't. And I know you certainly understand that very well. And so I, in my late 30s, got married to a man who I'd known my entire adult life. He was a good friend. He was my brother's resident assistant in college, and got married at 37, and was blessed to give birth to a beautiful little girl at the age of 39, after being told really my entire life from teenage years on that I may not be able to have a baby for different reasons. And so she was a miracle baby. Gabrielle was a miracle baby. It was a high-risk pregnancy. I was able to conceive her naturally. There were no problems. I had a wonderful pregnancy. And then this beautiful, effervescent little miracle girl was in the world. And I think more than anything in the world, the two things I always wanted to do were to be a mom, more than to be a wife maybe, but to be a mom, and to write a book.
Okay.
And so I've gotten to do both, but in ways that certainly I would not have chosen or could have imagined when I was younger.
That was not how you were going to write that storyline.
That's right. That's right. So I was, married, going through life, and at some point decided that, after lots of prayer, lots of counseling, lots of Christian counseling, that our marriage was just not going, we weren't growing. We weren't growing together in the way that I wanted, and certainly not in the way I wanted to represent to my daughter. As a woman, I wanted to model for her what relationships should look like. And unfortunately, my marriage did not represent what I would have wanted her to see. And so I decided to ask my husband for a divorce.
And did you all have any violence or anything that you look back and see as a precursor? Okay.
No. I certainly have a better understanding of emotional abuse now. And so, when I think about, sometimes the things that were said to me or directed to me, never at Gabrielle, I can definitely see how the ground was laid from an emotional abuse standpoint. I knew I was not in a healthy relationship. And I knew that he was furious about us getting a divorce. He did not want to get a divorce. And, because of the tension in the house as a result of it, I moved out while we were going through the divorce proceedings. And, through lawyers, we had to work out temporary arrangements for Gabrielle. So she would spend some nights with her father in our family home and some nights with me in the rental house, because I just wanted to take as much of the friction out of it for her as possible.
Yeah, soften that. It's such a huge transition for everyone, but to make it easier for them. Okay, so you had moved out and the divorce was finalized?
Well, in fact, he fought the divorce for quite a long time, and I received a call that he was willing to sign the paperwork. And I left my job immediately, afraid he would change his mind because it had been such a long, tumultuous road, and found a notary at a local postal store. And we met there to sign the paperwork on June 5th, 2017. And I remember the last thing he said to me was, "I'm sorry for everything that's happened during this process." And I gave him a hug and said, "You know what? All that matters is Gabrielle. All that matters is that we love our baby, that we're going to co-parent. We were friends before anything else. We'll always be friends. And I went back to my rental home that night. Gabrielle was staying with her dad that night, and just felt like the weight of the world had been lifted from my shoulders after months and months of controversy and back and forth, and called all my prayer warriors with this praise report that he had finally signed the papers. And I got up the next morning and went to work as usual. And shortly after lunch, I received a phone call from our caregiver, who actually was a deacon at our church. And it was just a blood-curdling scream. And it was very, very clear that she had walked into a crime scene.
Oh.
And I didn't know what to think. You know, Gabrielle in my head was still at school. My first thought was, oh my gosh, her dad has killed himself. How am I going to explain this to her? And then over the next few minutes, as I started to, told her to get out and to call 911, and my brain started to process, I called a dear friend whose daughter was the same age and asked if she had seen Gabrielle at school that morning when she dropped her daughter off. And she said no. And at that moment, there was just this heaviness that came over me. And I remember going to find a closet, and I shut the door and got on my knees and said, God, I don't know what I'm about to walk into, but please give me the strength to endure it. And took the longest ride of my life back to that family home where we'd bought our first home together, where my husband had carried me over the threshold, where we brought our little baby girl home from the hospital. And as I drove up this time, there was police tape, there was an ambulance, there were police cars, and there was my pastor. And he almost pulled me out of the car like a baby and told me that Gabrielle was gone.
And there is the before and after line in the sand of your life where you will never be the same again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's such a powerful image, Rachel. In my book, I divide it into 3 parts: before, yet, and after. For that very reason, is for those of us that have gone through unimaginable loss, where all of a sudden life can never look like we thought it would look, there is a definitive moment.
Yeah, there is. And I'm really empathizing with you. It's incredible what experiencing trauma, how it can open your heart to feeling for someone else in a way that I would have never been able to. And I'm so sorry that I can relate, but I also am so grateful to have beautiful people like yourself in the community of the grieving, that we walk through this together and that we don't have to do it alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the phone call, the moment, life is totally different. Your husband took your daughter's life, your ex-husband. Did he die by suicide in that time, or he did not take his life?
He did not take his life. And he never admitted to what he did. And so we went through a criminal trial. It took 2 years to go to court for the criminal trial. It took 2 years while he was behind bars awaiting trial for me to even get a divorce. And so, I was forced to face not just the loss of my child, but the worst, most evil type of infidelity, right? That could exist. And I will tell you, in that moment in the sand, kind of the before moment when everything changed, it was so clear to me this was worse than my worst nightmare. Mm-hmm. That the devil had come at me with everything he had, that this was supposed to take me out, maybe literally. There was a lot of conversations with law enforcement afterwards about the plan and what they suspect the ultimate plan was. And, we talk about God's love easily. We talk about his grace and mercy easily. It's hard to talk about evil.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk about the darkness, but it's real. It is real. The Bible says it's real. And so it was clear to me that whatever it was God had for me to do in this world was something powerful enough that the devil literally was trying to kill me, and that I would not falter because I wasn't going to let evil win.
I've said to myself before, like, I won't let this loss control me. Like, I won't be defined by pain and grief. I must experience it. I must go through it, but I will not take it on as my identity. And it's so interesting to hear you kind of echoing that same, like, screw you, devil. Like, you came for me and I said no. And that is so very powerful. So powerful. Oh man, complicated bereavement. Like, this is definitely one of those experiences with so many levels and layers of pain. And that's one of the things in my story that I've been so grateful that my husband's killer didn't survive. So I didn't have to go through the trial. I didn't have to go to court. I didn't have to see their face. I didn't have to experience that pain. And that is such an incredible stress all by itself. And in the midst of everything that you are going through, you are absolutely a hope warrior. Thank you.
Well, you just touched on something else that I think people need to hear and that I try to talk about, and that's gratitude, even in the midst of this. So you were able to say, thank you, God, that I didn't have to deal with going to court, right? Even though you lost what you lost, you can still find a way to thank God for what you did not have to deal with. I was thankful that Gabrielle was asleep in her room. I was thankful that she was home and her life was not interrupted in the way of the children that when I when I was at America's Most Wanted, and kids who were afraid, right, and stolen from their homes and subjected to strangers. And so I think that one of the first lifelines that you grip onto in those early moments of grief and trauma is just scanning your heart and the world for something that has light that you can be grateful for. I think it's essential.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I relate to that. Just every little grace and every tiny silver lining, because it's so dark. Like, to experience that level of loss. I mean, I thought that the pain was going to kill me. Like, I would either die from pain, if that was somehow possible, or I would decide that I couldn't tolerate it anymore and that I would end my own life because I was in so much pain that seemed relentless, and I really couldn't see a way to the other side. And I think it's interesting that your book is the other side of yet, and I would love to hear about that and where is that coming from in your story?
Well, there's two places. As I was being driven away from the crime scene that first night, I Googled the verse in the book of Job because I wanted to make sure I had it right. Job 13:15, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. And it was aspirational for a long time, probably, but it was a battle cry. And for me, it was, despite the fact that this has happened, in spite of evil, in spite of darkness, in spite of this horrific nightmare, I'm going to keep holding on. Even if I don't know why, even if I don't want to. And so really the book is about how do you get to the other side of that yet, to the I will trust him. And ultimately to having another life, right? Your before life is gone. And so the yet is that pivot. And it certainly doesn't happen overnight. But to, at some point, through faith, through love, through hope, through struggle and grief, being able to imagine life different, perhaps not like you would have wanted it, but that you can still have a life and you can still have love and joy, despite the fact that it doesn't look like you thought it would ever look. So that's where the title, The Other Side of Yet, comes from.
I'm not a tattoo person, but I've even thought of getting that just as a reminder of what radical trust and acceptance of the sovereignty of God means in my life. And that though it has cost me most dearly, I choose Jesus. I choose to love him in the face of loss. And I love what you're talking about, learning to dream again, because so many dreams died with Gabrielle and the future, and getting to see her grow up and living life with her. And it feels like in the immensity of loss that there is no more future, that your future died. And so to stand here, and I think our losses have a similar timeline, at least mine is February of 18, so it sounds like they're pretty close. To be 5 years out and to sit here with you and to feel like I can affirm, like, I have dreams again. I have days where there's more sunshine than rain. There's places for deep exhales, and you're never the same. Like the before is never coming back, and you are a different person and you're changed because of your loss. But there is good change if you surrender the story into God's hands and let him work in the midst, in the mix of that messy pain.
Absolutely, 100%. And, you said something a few minutes ago that was so powerful about your ability to empathize with me because of what you've been through. And there is something powerful about the type of ministry you can do, how you can minister to complete strangers who have completely different lives or backgrounds or cultures than you, just because of that common denominator of grief and trauma. And of course, everyone's grief is different, everyone's trauma is different, but your ability to stand with someone because of what you've been through is an incredibly powerful gift as a Christian. And it is a service gift. It is not a gift anyone has asked for or that anyone wants.
One that I would request.
No, but what it can do for other people is just so powerful. Just so powerful.
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at you and thinking, like, people for me have commented, like, how do you stay faithful? How do you continue to walk forward? How do you do that? And they're amazed by it. And I'm looking at you and thinking and feeling those same things. Even though we share that commonality of loss, I'm like, wow, it's so powerful that when we experience trauma and loss and say, I still choose joy, I choose hope, I choose Jesus, I choose healing, even while you're, laid out on the floor, snot in the carpet, like, cannot imagine a way forward. That, like, there is just something so powerful in the authority of that level of trust and surrender. Like, yeah, I'm just covered in chills right now. Thank you for stewarding your pain in a way that God is using.
Thank you. And to me, and I'm sure you've heard it often as well, I don't know how you do it. And I always say, I don't know how I do it either. I don't do it. It's God. That's how powerful my God is. That a woman who wanted to be a mother more than anything else, who worked on missing children stories and was on the other side of police tape and on the other side of crimes as a reporter, that woman could survive and find a way to thrive in life after losing the most important thing in the world. That's how big my God is.
Wow, that is stunning. That's a power play right there. Wow. Michelle, tell me about Gabrielle's wings and what you have created to serve others in your pain.
Yes, I'm so proud of the work that we've done, and I know you can relate to this as well. When we're able to find a way to get outside of ourselves in our pain and help others, whether that's an organization or podcasts or, telling your story, getting outside of yourself, for me, has been oxygen. And for me, it's been service and service to children. And so Gabrielle's Wings obviously was created in memory of Gabrielle. And the idea behind it is for us to work, and we have work on 3 continents right now, focused on elementary age children of color in underrepresented communities, and really giving them those fundamental tools that are game changers, social emotional learning tools, literacy tools, things like free swim lessons at the YMCA, because Black and brown children drown 4 to 5 times as much as their Caucasian
swim,
peers.
Yeah, generationally, that's huge.
So, the work that we're doing now, and we've, we're going into our 5th year and have about $500,000 so far that we've been able to allocate to different organizations, scholarships, and funds. Every time I look into the eyes of a child who's being impacted by this work, I see Gabrielle. I see my daughter.
So beautiful. That's so beautiful. I love seeing the beauty in the ashes. That's amazing. Yeah, and I love the way that you have kind of, like, I would never think when you tell me about Gabrielle's Wings, like the story that's behind it. And I love that you told me before that you wanted something that represented her life and not her loss. And everything that you're saying about this organization is so life-giving. Yeah,
yes.
It's such an investment.
It's affirming. It's life-affirming, right?
Yeah, it's life-affirming. That's beautiful. Michelle, where can people find out more about you, donate to Gabrielle's Wings, find your book?
Yes. So MD Hord, like Dr. Hord, although I'm no one's doctor, on Instagram. And Gabrielle's Wings is also on Instagram. And you can find the organization at gabrielleswings.org and donate right there on our website, and follow us and hear about all the great projects that we're working on. We're currently in Belize working on a literacy project this very week that I'm super excited about. And then my book, The Other Side of Yet, is available wherever you buy your books. It's in, paperback now, and has a reader's guide for book clubs, what I call your spirit backpack. So it offers some tools beyond the book itself that, people can work on individually or collectively in, church groups, readers groups.
That's awesome. I love that you adapted it for people to read together, because I think there's so much healing that can happen collectively.
Yes.
That's awesome. So intentional. Michelle, this has been such an honor. Thank you for sharing your story with me and with the Hopecast listeners. And I just bless you for how you've chosen to walk through this, and what an incredible testimony that is.
Thank you so much. God bless you and your family, Rachel. And thank you for the work you're doing through this podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Friends, this has been the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. If Michelle's incredible story has impacted you, and you know someone who would be inspired, who would benefit in their healing journey from hearing it, would you share it with them and join me as a hope peddler, pushing forward life and this healing journey together? Friends, this has been the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.
You've been listening to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. To find out more, go to rachelflick.com. While you're there, you can book Rachael for your next speaking engagement. Her inspiring message will be sure to engage and touch the heart of your audience at your next conference, church event, or business function. Go to rachelflick.com to book her today. While you're online, you can discover more information about all of the platforms that this podcast is on. Also, be sure to click on the social media icons at the top of the page, and you will be directed to Rachael's social media sites. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate if you would subscribe and leave us a review. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.